Hey guys. Okay, hypothetically speaking, and I'm doing this video without any refresher reading or research on this case, so bear with me. If I get something wrong, just tell me and I'll correct it. Hypothetically speaking, you are Diane Downs' younger brother, and you absolutely believe that she is innocent. You're raised in a family where your mom's a stay-at-home mom, your dad is a really hard worker, he was the postmaster. You have a nice home, it's always clean, you have nice meals together as a family. I don't think anybody in the family had any criminal histories or drug issues or anything like that. So you have a really nice family in a nice community. And I think they had a house full of kids. So you're the little brother. You grow up in this family. By the time you're even in school, I think, your older sister is already off and married and living far away. So you really don't even know her that well. And then when you graduate from high school, you take off and pursue your education and your career. And you live a few states away, at least, from your parents. So you really don't know your sister very well. But you love her and you believe in her. And she has 3 children that you love with all your heart, that your entire family loves. So one year, your sister announces that she's going to move back to your hometown. She works for the post office too. And your mother is thrilled because that means that the grandchildren are going to be close by. She transfers to the post office, moves her kids. They get, I think, a little apartment. It may have been a little house, but they got some kind of a rental. And when you talk to your mom and dad, they're excited because they get to see the kids. In fact, the kids are at their house every day. And they're so happy to know that the kids are fine and that they're able to spend time with them. In fact, your mom feeds them dinner practically every night. And then all of a sudden, you're told that some bushy-haired stranger shot your sister and her 3 children. A random stranger is what you're told. She was out taking a drive. She had the kids in the car. It was a school night, yeah, and the kids should have been in bed by then, of course. It was after dark. I can't remember what time it was, but I think it was like 10 something. And she, I think, took the kids to see a horse. I think one of her friends had a horse. And then on the way home, she wanted to take the scenic route, which doesn't make any sense because it was dark. She said that there was a man standing there in the road waving her down. She said that she stopped her car and that she got out of her car and said, "Hey, what do you need?" That doesn't make sense either, because if you're going to slow down to help some stranger, then it seems to me like, number one, you're not going to do that if you have your children with you. And you're not going to do that if you're traveling alone on a dark, deserted highway. You're just not going to do it. But she says that's what happened. She says she did do that. Okay, so if you're going to slow down and try to help out some stranger, if you think he's having car trouble or something, except, of course, according to her story, there was no car. If you're going to slow down and see what the guy needs, why get out of the car? Why not just pull up alongside where he was standing and roll down your window a couple of inches and say, what's the problem? So according to her story, she got out of the car. He said, give me the keys. She said, what? You're crazy. And then she pretended to throw the keys. He looked in the direction that she supposedly pretended to throw the keys toward. And when he looked away for that split second, she got back in the car and I'm trying to think, hold on. Nope, I have it wrong. Sorry about that. Her story, because she didn't do that little fast getaway thing until after he shot everyone. So let's back up. Back up. Okay, so she stops her car, evidently puts it in park, takes the keys out of the ignition, gets out of the car, and says, hey, what do you need? Or something like that. He says, give me the keys. She says, no way. You're crazy. She says he reached in and shot the children, each of them. And that in their little scuffle, evidently, he shot her in the arm. Isn't that interesting? How they always seem to get hurt in the arm. You know, Darlie Routier had that stab wound on her arm. Diane Downs got shot in the arm. Well, their children suffered fatal or near fatal wounds. They got hurt in the arm. You see what I'm saying? So, after the guy shot everybody, then she did her little fake throwing the keys routine. He looked to see where the keys went, and in that split second, she hopped in the car and sped away and raced off to the hospital to save her children. Except she didn't race to the hospital, like she said, because another car came up behind her and was very frustrated because she was going so slow. And just like Darlie Routier, she was applying pressure to her own wound, but not applying pressure to her children's wounds. Okay, so back to the hypothetical. So you're Diane Downs' kid brother, and you hear that your sister and her 3 children, your nieces and your nephew, who you love, have all been shot by a bushy-haired stranger in the dark on a deserted highway on a school night after 10 p.m. And the news went wild. The headlines were all about Diane Downs. And boy, did she seem to enjoy the spotlight, just like Darlie Routier with that stupid silly string interview that she did. What was that, for like 45 minutes straight, smiling and flirting with the reporter and chomping her gum. Diane Downs was the same way. She seemed to thrive on being on camera. She joked and she laughed. And then she said something weird during one of her interviews that she was really unlucky. She said people tell her that she was really lucky, that she survived the attack, but she didn't feel very lucky, she said, because it was really difficult for her to tie her shoes. I think that was a huge turning point for most people watching the news or any of her interviews, because one of her daughters had just died. One of her children, I believe, was paralyzed from the injuries. And one of her children had suffered, I believe, a stroke from the injuries. And she was complaining about how difficult it was for her to tie her shoes. And she was smiling big the entire time she was talking. The police investigators asked her to do like a reenactment of what happened to show her. They were outside with her car. And she accidentally banged her arm, the injured one, on the car door. And she laughed. And she said kind of like, "Oh, that hurt. Oh, I just hit my arm. Oh." And she was laughing like it was party time or something. Remember, 2 of her children were still in the hospital fighting for their lives. And one of her children had already passed away. Can you imagine being her kid brother and watching all the news media coverage of the case? And basically watching his sister being ridiculed all across the country, probably all across the world. But you still believe in your sister. You just can't imagine that your sister would have done this to her children. As time goes on, then she becomes the primary suspect and she's arrested. But by the time she was arrested, she succeeded in her quest to get pregnant again. No kidding. And she was proud of it, too. Imagine being her kid brother. Imagine believing in your sister, but watching her then make so many mistakes with how she handled herself and how she handled her case. She was found guilty, of course. Imagine the heartbreak for her family to sit there and listen to the testimony during her trial of her daughter who testified that she saw her mother go to the trunk and get the gun out of the trunk, and that the person who shot them, her and her little brother and her sister, was her own mom. The family was not awarded custody of the surviving children. And I don't know if they ever saw them again. I don't know. In fact, the prosecutor and his wife were awarded custody of the surviving children. Not during the trial. When people talk about this case so many times, they try to portray it as being the prosecutor and his wife wanting to get those kids, as if he was prosecuting their mother so that he could take custody of her children. That makes no sense. I think the prosecutor and his wife taking custody of the children is a fine example of people who are just good people, who probably fell in love with those kids during the course of the trial and wanted to be able to give them a good home with a whole lot of love and to protect them and to help them heal. But remember the hypothetical. You're Diane Down's kid brother, and you believe in your sister. You believe in your family. Can you imagine the pain that Diane Down's family suffered? Maybe some of them realizing what she had done, maybe not. Maybe they all believe she is innocent. Can you imagine losing their grandchildren? Her parents must have just been beside themselves with what happened. Do I think that Diane Downs is guilty? I do. I must admit, I went through a few months of researching the case quite a few years ago. And I thought, wow, maybe she didn't do it. But I think she did. I don't think it was all about her boyfriend necessarily. And, it was another case where the boyfriend told her that he wasn't interested in having children, just like the Susan Smith saga. Susan Smith's boyfriend broke up with her because she had a couple of kids. She's the woman who drove out to the lake and she had her sons, little Alex and Michael, in their car seats. And she hopped out of the car and let the car roll right into the lake with her children trapped inside. I don't think that was the case with Diane Downs. Maybe it was part of it for her. I don't know. She was doinking a coworker, a very married coworker, and she wanted him to leave his wife, and he said no. And he said he didn't want to have kids. I don't know. I don't think that was her entire motive. I think she was sick. I think she was very sick. Like scary kind of sick, if you know what I'm saying. I don't know. But I will say this, I do feel sorry for her kid brother. I feel sorry for her family members. Because I really think that they really think that there was a bushy-haired stranger out on the highway after dark waving her down.